Blasphemy. You hear that word and wow, it's loaded, right? It sparks so much outrage, so much confusion. But what does it actually mean from a legal standpoint in Islamic tradition? Well, we're going to cut through all that noise and get right to the heart of it.
So you have to ask, where's the real line between just being disrespectful and committing actual blasphemy? And let me tell you, the answer, it's probably not what you're thinking. It's not about looking up a word in a dictionary. It's about this really fascinating legal concept.
Yeah, that concept is called urf. And what urf means, really, is social custom, the common understanding of a community. And this is so critical, because it means that what counts as an insult isn't some fixed thing written in a rule book forever. Nope, it's all about the shared context of a specific time and a specific place.
Okay, so let's break this down a bit. You've got two key terms here. First, there's ادبی. Think of this as disrespect, right? It's like a breach of etiquette, not using the right honorific for someone. Then, on the other side, you have گستاخی. Now, that is what we're talking about with blasphemy. It's about an intentional, hostile insult. It's really the difference between just having bad manners and having actual malicious intent.
But you see, this brings up a huge problem for any court, right? Because while theologically a person's hidden intent is what really matters to God, a judge in a courtroom, they can't see into someone's heart. They can only rule on the hard evidence, on the literal words that were actually spoken. What's really going on inside a person's head? Well, that's ultimately between them and God.
All right, so let's say a court does establish that blasphemy happened. Is the punishment a simple, open and shut case? Not even close. In fact, this is where the whole debate gets even more complicated.
And what's really fascinating is just how much disagreement there is among the jurists, the fuqaha. I mean, this has been debated for centuries. You have some scholars who believe that if the accused repents, hey, the court can and should accept it. But then you have others, like the schools of Imam Ahmad and Imam Malik, who argue that the punishment must be carried out, even after repentance. Even the Prophet Muhammad himself didn't punish every single instance. He always weighed the context and the wisdom of the moment. So for a modern state, this means there's actually a whole range of valid, established legal opinions they can draw from when they create their own laws.
But here's something really important. While the scholars might disagree on the punishment, there's one thing they're pretty much all unified on: who gets to carry it out. And this quote from Mufti Yasser Nadim makes it crystal clear. For the public, for a mob, to take the law into their own hands, that is in itself an unjustified act. Plain and simple. It's not their job.
So instead of that kind of chaos, Sharia actually lays out a very clear, very formal process. It's not mob rule, it's a system. First, the case has to be brought to a court. Then, evidence is presented, witnesses are heard. After that, a judge delivers the verdict. And here's the crucial part. Only the state has the authority to execute the sentence.
Okay, but you might be thinking, what if the courts are corrupt or just failing? Does that make vigilantism okay? Well, according to this legal tradition, the answer is a hard no. The solution isn't to just throw the whole system out and bypass it. The solution is to work to reform it.
All right, so we've laid out all these principles, but how does this all play out in the real world with all its messiness? To see that, let's take a look at a very modern, very controversial case, the one involving engineer Muhammad Ali Mirza.
The entire controversy really boils down to one central question. Was he originating a blasphemous phrase himself, or was he just quoting something that someone else had already said? Because, as the defense argues, those are two completely fundamentally different actions.
And to figure that out, to make a proper judgment, you can't just look at one sentence in a vacuum. Jurists will look at the person's entire track record. We're talking about their whole body of work, their history as a scholar, their usual style of speaking. In other words, context is absolutely everything.
So, getting back to the specific case, the Mufti's analysis is really nuanced. First off, he makes it very clear that the final legal verdict of blasphemy, that's for a court to decide, not him. Now, his personal take, he sees the words as ادبی, disrespectful, but he doesn't go so far as to call it گستاخی or true blasphemy. He's not declaring the person a blasphemer, but he's not totally exonerating him either. And he points out that the huge public outcry, it's not just about this one sentence. It's really a reaction to this person's entire long-standing controversial track record.
And this really highlights a crucial point. There's a clear separation of powers here. A scholar, a mufti, can give their expert opinion from a religious or theological standpoint. But the very second, a case goes to court, the authority completely shifts.
At that point, the final word belongs to the judge and the court, and no one else.
I mean, the Mufti himself says it as bluntly as possible. The judge will decide. The Mufti's job is over now. It really doesn't get clearer than that. There's a sharp, bright line between offering religious guidance and handing down a legal verdict.
And so, this all leaves us with a really powerful final question to think about. When you have these incredibly complex cases, where you have established law and deep religious interpretation, and just raw, intense public emotion all crashing into each other, who or what ends up being the final arbiter of justice? That's really the tension at the very heart of this whole thing.